So hello everyone, I'm Nicole Rathie. Welcome to our webinar today. Today we'll be really jumping into how manufacturing can be elevated with the use of AI. So through that conversation, we'll be speaking with Phasio and how their AI technology for the manufacturing ecosystem can elevate your processes and streamline your supply chain. And so with that, we will be really focusing on the additive manufacturing ecosystem today. We'll be diving into the benefits of how AI has kind of been intertwined into the Canadian marketplace and how Canadian ecosystem members can take advantage of that. We'll also kind of understand the why and the how AI applies to additive manufacturing and the digital infrastructure that goes along with it that Phasio has been building out and enhancing for additive manufacturing supply chain. Before I get started today, I just wanted to take a few moments here to introduce myself and our co-host today. So if we haven't met yet, I'm Nicole Rathie, the Director of Community Relations here at Canada Makes. If you're unfamiliar with Canada Makes, we are an industry non-for-profit focused on supporting, advocating, and accelerating additive manufacturing development and adoption here in Canada. We strive to support the entire ecosystem from additive powder manufacturers to prototype bureaus to academia and everywhere in between. We are on a mission to ensure that the Canadian additive businesses have a voice in the ecosystem nationally and internationally. I'll pop my details down below in the chat. If anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out. As well, our co-hosts today are Ludwig and Stefan. Ludwig is the Chief of Staff at Phasio, and Stefan is an advisor at Phasio. The organization itself is focused on creating a customer collaboration workspace for industrial manufacturers. Their services can be applied to a variety of different advanced manufacturing use cases, but they have really been building out the additive manufacturing use case and supporting additive manufacturers in their digital journey. Without further delay, I will pass it off to Stefan to introduce Phasio a little bit more and our webinar today.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nicole, for this beautiful introduction. I really love the precision with which you narrowed down the topic of today. And building on that, I want to give a bit of context on Phasio and what the story is and where we come from. I myself come from 3D printing for space technology specifically, and one of the big challenges that I saw already many years ago after the big patents of the large organizations fell through and opened up was how do we do quality? How do we understand exactly if our design, material, and process allows us to actually launch this part in space? And in the many years in the space industry, I did material science research, and somehow there was a lack of process and a lack of understanding of how we can actually connect all these data from my design to my material choices to the final application and all the different possibilities that we have when someone would ask, hey, can I send you my 3D file? And you tell me, can we 3D print it instead of CNC it? I would have to give a very quick answer. And I would usually say yes, because I simply love 3D printing. And in today's session, what I'm really excited about is showcasing how, now we're basically 10 years later, and we have amazing technology to actually help us in educating ourselves and others what is possible with these technologies, as well as assuring quality at the end of the day. So if we think about where AI is applied in today's manufacturing world, it ranges from predictive maintenance to in-process monitoring, as well as looking at the overall supply chain and maybe optimizing certain parts there, forecasting different parts there. There's also robotics and automation, where you can actually improve and perform very complex tasks. In design, the simulation part and the generative design part, optimizing print parameters, all of that stuff exists. But what we're going to focus on today is very specifically what Phasio has been building out. Phasio as a company was started 3 years ago in Singapore. And as of the last 1 year, there's a very clear focus on what the company is and what it does and who it helps with. Because as you know, startups were always going through what do people actually need and what product do we build that actually satisfies those needs. And we help manufacturers bring in more business by giving them a better digital presence. And second of all, we help streamline operations by actually in the back end having a tool connect to all different other tools that you're already using. And then lastly, as a whole, this will help with the whole quality management process. So we're going to focus on the top of the funnel part right now, to bring in more business, because that comes from educating people and it comes from actually pre-qualifying all the different people that speak with you. When they reach out to you and like, hey, we know you do 3D printing. Can you produce this part for us? And then you probably have a conversation with them around what they exactly need. You have a conversation with them around which material choices they have in mind, what time frame, all of that kind of information needs to be exchanged. And we have created a way to actually streamline this overall process of pre-qualification and education. And the reason why it's important to think about these topics is because, as you probably know, customers typically don't know what they want, right? They often are new to maybe 3D printing, um, and they keep asking the same questions, most likely. And you keep asking the same questions, most likely, right? So there's a checklist on both sides. And on your internal side, different people on your team might also have different answers based on the role that they have in the company, right? Because your sales engineer might have a different opinion than your production manager, than the machinery specialist. Um, so it's really important to discuss these different changes in perception, I would say. And I know, Nicole, you've had a big background in marketing yourself, so you know that the alignment element is very important in the beginning to make sure that people actually have a handshake between what they're looking for and what they're actually getting at the end of the day. So yeah, it's a very interesting moment in time because we're now also seeing how the strategic online presence for business growth is more and more important. And Nicole, I'd be curious from your perspective, looking at the Canadian manufacturing and specifically 3D printing industry from Canada Makes perspective, um, what kind of topics or trend are you currently seeing, and what like changes in perception are you currently seeing?
For sure. I think in, Canada, us being such a large country, it's decently kind of spread out across the country and diversified. And I think there is kind of a trend in Canada, and kind of a need in Canada to be collaborative and to kind of showcase your capabilities and your internal insights and stuff like that. Um, but also kind of leverage that collaborative network and ecosystem, whether it be, Canada Makes or Engine, but also your internal ecosystem. And I think
Mm-hmm.
leveraging those ecosystems comes with having a digital footprint, having a strong, sense of brand and your market targets, if you will. And so with that, making sure that those are in line internally, so then you can transfer them externally. I think that is definitely a huge conversation. And as well, there's always a conversation, I think, in Canada about the more risk adverse and kind of hesitant to innovate, um, where I think that collides with kind of the buzz terms of AI that we all hear every day in the
Mm-hmm.
news and everything like that. We're scaling it down, and I think you guys kind of marry the two of the marketing side of it, the brand awareness, the leveraging who you are and knowing your specific goals with then applying technology to it. So it's not two separate things by any means, but it's how do you best leverage your brand using digital tools? I think that's definitely a big conversation to be had in Canada, and resources like this definitely help for sure.
I'm really happy to hear that, and it's such a joy that you invited us to co-create this with you and to speak with your community. And really, at the end of the day, I believe this may be a technology-centric conversation today, but at the end of the day, especially in manufacturing, it's very community-driven, right? Everyone knows everyone, and there's internal referrals, and everyone sort of over time builds these relationships based on trust, right? So the strategic use of technology is only to amplify what's already there. It's never to replace it. So it's also something that I always want to specify, because when we work in technology, I feel like sometimes people forget to work with actual humans on the other side. And then maybe one last question to you, Nicole, before we move to Ludi, who will show us a few very interesting examples of different customers we've worked with and what specific use cases actually exist. Um, the strategic use of communities like Canada Makes, would you say that everyone that you usually approach or work with, they understand how to actually leverage a community like Canada Makes or Engine or any of the other organizations that you work with? Because that's another part, right? Like the whole, how does everyone actually collaborate in this space?
Definitely. I think that's a really big challenge. Again, in Canada being so separated, you have your own internal community and you know what you know and you don't know what you don't know, unfortunately. And so with that, I think there is kind of some hand holding, if that's the right term, or some kind of helping people understand what we do in the ecosystem and how we support people. It's definitely a work in progress here in Canada, and I think, being online, being digital, being active in that respect with kind of your market presence is for sure really, really important for the ecosystem and for just manufacturing as a whole. But it definitely, is has some benefits, but then as well also has some times of, needing more assistance and understanding and more education, if you will, on the benefits of community building and ecosystem building in
Mhm.
an industry specific area such as additive manufacturing. And as well, I think there's a big conversation in the Canada Mix sphere as well as just that brand presence of our own of making sure all the additive manufacturers in Canada know about us, all the, users know how to access the programming we offer and stuff like that is definitely always continuing to grow and an exciting place to be for sure.
Beautiful. Well, it's really nice to have this handshake moment where we collaborate on basically giving people more time and access to spending time on community building. And that leads me to the last point I just want to share before we dive into the use cases is in a nutshell with building phase zero, we want to allow and empower manufacturers to really focus on what matters. And the first thing is manufacturing parts, right? That's a pretty obvious one. But the second one really is building relationships, right? So that's the community building aspect. Um, with customers, with suppliers, with partners, with whoever that might be. And then the third part is educating all the communities that they're part of, right? Because that very specific industry knowledge that comes from manufacturing different types of physical parts that our 3D world is still functioning on, that knowledge is oftentimes lost in translation in between all different layers of businesses. So yeah, this is why we also decided to start at the very top of the funnel, which is simply helping businesses bring in more business. And yeah, I will now hand it over to Ludi, who will share some very specific examples of how we do that.
Cool. Thank you very much, Nicole and Stefan, for your nice short discussion around these more high-level topics. I'm trying to bring this now into more of a tangible space. And as Stefan already said, I'm bringing here two examples. One is coming from Australia, and the other one is from Germany. And really, Nicole hit the nail on the head when she said that this online presence is becoming more and more important these days, also in the space of manufacturing, well, specifically in that space, because fewer people have like actually physical stores where they get something from. That's, I guess, very clear. And now just imagine someone walks into your store and you would probably greet the person and like kind of try to advise the person on the kind of services that you offer, right? But what happens these days is that most of the people just have their blank website, which has maybe some information, but got to be honest, few people actually read that. And it's not all that welcoming while this online appearance and showing that you're invested in your digital identity is really something that is very important. So we've been working with this company in Australia that has a very, very interesting business model for their making use of their website. So I'm sharing my screen here, and what we see here is what we call the storefront, and you can embed that on any kind of website. And for that, in that particular example, the manufacturer has the entire spectrum from prototyping through product design all the way to advanced manufacturing, such as like not advanced, but like injection molding and things like that, where you have like higher number of quantities. So he's basically doing lead generation with the storefront by when people upload models here, just having basically prices for making these first models at a very low price, which is sort of like, if you want to call it like that, a honeypot for people to attract, right? Like just lead generation through that. And then what he does with these leads is he's going to take them through his process where he actually sees and understands their pain in order to do something like product design with them, and then later on to produce large numbers of that quantity, right? But back to this example of someone walking into your physical store and you're actually helping the person making a decision, right? We help with that using this AI tool that we've been speaking about here for a little while already. Now we actually get to see something. Um, and people, as you know, might not actually know what kind of material, what kind of technology they're looking for while they want to get something manufactured. And you might also not be available 24/7, especially on the weekends, to cater to these kind of questions. So what you really want to do, or what you can do, is just give these people a bit of help. And for example, one solution could be an educational AI built into the system. So let's just go ahead and be like, hey, I need this part for outdoor applications. Is PLA suitable? So PLA was chosen automatically here from the start. And I just go ahead and ask this question here. Let me just, this was open for too long already. I'll just put this in here again. So for outdoor application, PLA might not be the best choice due to its lower heat resistance and fact that it can degrade under exposure to UV light. So here, that's an easy example, right? But it immediately catches like, yo, PLA is probably not the right option. So it's suggesting ASA. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. And then out of this conversation, it immediately changes the material in here and basically simplifies this kind of experience of like what kind of materials are there, like what technology is there, what do I choose based on actual use cases. And this can go from simple like indoor outdoor application to more complex or more on the engineering side of things where you talk about tensile strength and pressures and things like that. But for the sake of this short demonstration here, I want to take this one step further and basically say someone did this prototype here and that in light of that example, right? And then from like now we're going here towards the more of the backend side of things, where someone said like, I need this part for outdoor applications. And then the the example company that I'm talking about is basically transforming these into projects of doing more work with these clients and using for that these kinds of projects here, where a project really is like an agglomeration of a number of orders, of a bunch of communication. And this communication can actually be started based off the AI assistant. So we've just seen that I had a short example of how I interacted with the AI assistant, but this can also be, of course, a much longer conversation with like questions being asked. What do you actually need? Like a pre-qualification aspect. So these questions could be, what is the intended application or industry for this pipe connector in this specific example, right? Determine the type of material manufacturing process needed. So it's really questions that you would ask your clients can be covered here already in order to just direct the conversation a lot more once you have the conversation with your client. And then this particular person in Australia is then taking these sort of requests and conversations that are then here put further between actual humans and takes them into a design. So we have here the design section where this pipe connector is being made. So let's take a look. There have been a couple iterations already. This is the final iteration here. And even in these iterations, they can make comments on the model just to take the conversation onto the part level and also to group all requirements into a single thread, which is important for compliance and other things. And once the iteration is finished, right? Once we're done, okay, cool, done, that's it. We're ready to make this. They can go ahead and just create an order straight from this entire conversation thread, the orders and quotes and everything that's belonging to this very enclosed project is also given in a customer portal on the other side, such that the team on the customer side is all on the same page, as well as the team on the manufacturer side, everyone on the same page through like lots of entry points that involve AI systems like this. Um, so so far to the first example. I'll just go ahead and switch to the second example, and this one is just a bit of a different kind of perspective. I'll just go and share this blog post here by this company called Evoke. And while before we've been looking at these impact of an online appearance that is welcoming to a person that is actually stumbling across the website. And now we're going more into the parts where something like an easy reordering system is extremely important for the online presence because in the end, it's all about customer acquisition and then retention. And as Nicole and Stefan already pointed out about brand awareness, right? So this German company here, they actually built very interesting use case for this conveyor belt plastic parts. So the question that they put here is what's the link between 5,000 tons of potatoes and 3D printing? And well, the link is here. You can see they made these parts of using FDM actually. And these parts are sitting here on this conveyor belt. And the reason why I'm showing this is because that this project was initiated through some of the AI conversation tools and run through as a project. And the very interesting part with this manufacturer in particular is here that Eduard is very much focused on automation. So this person, this farmer that is using these kind of conveyor belts actually frequently needs to replace a few of these because um, they're like under heavy usage 24 hours a day. And now with the system with Phasio that he set up, that farmer can just go ahead and just whenever something is broken, go ahead and reorder that and it will be seamlessly put onto the printers into Evoke's 3D printing business. And that proves to show the layer of automation that can be achieved in this kind of industry. And last but not least, I want to show something that is more of an internal use case, but can also be an external use case. And that is here. It's called like now the third pillar, sort of like a customer service AI, where people can just have quick access through all the materials and technologies that are available for a specific manufacturer, right? So just imagine you're a salesperson, you get a call and someone asks you specific questions about, like, for example, a certain material, right? So in this case, it was someone asked about ASA, right? So I just put an example in here. What's an overview of mechanical properties of ASA? And then there's just some examples of an overview that there's like tensile strength, structural strength, and then also about heat resistance. But you can also go ahead and there are specific questions and someone asks you, okay, I need a material that withstands X, Y, and Z. And that person's like not there to flick through all the material data sheets, and the AI can do that for you. So it's sort of like an internal support tool at this stage. So I would just, for example, go ahead. What's the difference between PET and PETG? And then, yeah, sorry. I also opened this at the very beginning of the webinar, and therefore this session here expired. I'm just going to put this in here. And now we get the results. So it's just the explanation of the difference between PT and PETG, whereas the chemical composition, clarity and gloss, impact resistance, processing formability, among other things. So there's a company in Germany actually that's using this in order to answer queries on the phone that might be a bit more complex or more demanding, and then having a simple access to a range of different materials and material data sheets that are configured for that specific operator that is using this. And with this, I gave three short examples. First one was a company in Australia that is focused on lead generation and then upselling those leads through their website and digital presence. The second one was just about retention and full automation from reordering straight to the printer without any human intervention. And the third example here is more of an internal use case with AI as in quick access to material information, and not only general material information, but specific only to whatever materials you actually offer and to context that you train the custom AI with. Yeah, thank you for my chance to speak here thus far. And I'm interested to hear whether any one of you has any questions about this.
I think participants will write their questions in the chat, buddy. In the meantime, I have a question for you. How do people get started with implementing this?
Well, it depends a tiny bit on your use case, because that's actually the most interesting questions. Like, it's not advised to just go ahead and start and implement. It's more like, let's sit down, speak, what do you want to achieve, and then have a very very informed basically start into this. But then it's more like a matter of days to just get down to the use case, configure everything that needs to be configured, like materials, technologies, information about these materials, and then everything works out of the box.
Very cool. Yeah, I saw the video from Edward last week or 2 weeks ago on LinkedIn with the potatoes, and I thought that was really cool. But I had no idea that that's how far we have gotten with automation with them, that the customer can actually basically decide what's going to be on the printer the same or next day, based on availability.
It's also not for every customer, right? That's for the
Yeah.
specific ones where you've like greenlit everything and configured it that way, of course. But yeah, it's kind of impressive what kind of speeds you can achieve doing that. It also it might be some like a new use case also for this community here, but I'm happy to share with Canada Makes and Engine. It's just imagine you have a client, and that client has a warehouse, and in that warehouse there are X number of parts, right? And a subset of those parts will be made or can be made with 3D printing, and maybe even made more economically with 3D printing, right? But then that customer of yours might not have the capabilities to do all of that in-house, or even the knowledge, right? So with the option of a part catalog that you can define for your customers, for your individual customer, you can basically make sure that their warehouse units are always up on full stock, or whatever means full stock for that particular customer. So it's basically you become the warehouse manager plus also the manufacturer for these parts in a close relationship, which is desirable, as the reorders of the same part are the ones with the highest profit margin and the biggest or the lowest risk, so to say.
For sure, and thanks for that explanation. We do have a question from the audience here as well, and I think it is of extreme value given kind of the Canada Makes ecosystem is built up of a lot of kind of SMEs and players across Canada. But one of the questions here is what is the value add versus the established players like Exometry and Proto Labs, besides just adding the AI layer? So can you guys, I guess, dive into more of the differentiating with your tech versus, you know, others out there, I guess?
Sure. Um, it's in this case really not all about tech because you have these zometries and there's Fictive and Protolabs and all the other players out there that are more running marketplaces. And what we, for example, do is we empower local manufacturers with cutting edge software. And that is very different to what these marketplaces like Xometry do, right? Because you have a customer on one end and you have a manufacturer on the other hand. And in the center somewhere, like my head, for example, would be the Xometry or Protolabs. And everything is going through that third party. So in the end, the customer doesn't know who the manufacturer is. And the manufacturer doesn't know who the customer is, which leads to all sorts of problems like quality assurance, quality control. Sure, that's done through the Xometry, but how can you ensure that the customer actually gets what they want if the manufacturer can't even ensure that they know exactly what the customer wants, right? After all, the manufacturer gets a blank sheet of paper which says, do this with that material, and then that's it, right? So actually, many of the service bureaus that we're working with in Europe and in Australia and also in the US are actually, um, yeah, of course, not a big fan of these marketplaces. Firstly, because they take a cut of the revenue, which is something that we don't, and then also that there's just a lack of communication between the two most important parts, right? The end customer and the manufacturer.
And I just want to add to that as well. Um, at the end of the day, this is a relationship building exercise and it's a trust building exercise. And when there's intermediary um, in a space where there is no trust, that can be an amazing thing to do, right? But when you really want to go to the next level, ideally you remove that layer in between so you have less interfaces. So we in the last 6 to 12 months we've played a lot with like how do we even present Phasio to exactly as Pascal asked, um, clarify very specifically what the value add is, and the tool allows you to basically reduce all the IT support needed in order to have high quality services towards your customers. So you can really focus on building that relationship. And that includes things like having full traceability in all the communication that ever happened. So if a few months down the line you're wondering, hey, why did we take that decision to change that specific parameter on design based on that specific material after the 100th print, they're not going to know exactly that was because of that WhatsApp message that was sent on that time. And you can always reuse basically these insights and these data because you end up actually owning that relationship.
For sure. I think that
I
makes a
hope
lot of
that answers your question, Pascal.
Definitely. I would just take a moment here to open up the floor if any of our guests want to either hop off mute or as well put a question in the chat. We'd love to answer some of your questions. As well, I guess I can jump in. And I think you might have covered it, but I got a little bit confused as well. So when you're working with kind of a SME, let's say, or a prototyping shop or something like
Mm.
that, um, is it kind of more of a plug and play application, or is it more you're building out kind of custom to the service provider or anything like that? Can you just take us through maybe a little bit of the workflow within Phasio?
Yeah, of course. So it's set up to be plug and play at a very high degree of customizability. So every function and everything that it revolves around like this like storefront that we've seen and the AI bot and all of these things, they work out of the box. And then you can, the specifics around it, configure them to a very high degree in terms of the kinds of technologies and materials, and then also context for the AI bots that you can input that is all just based on you. And this goes so far that if you want to take it really, really far, you can provide every single customer of yours with their custom pricing for every single technology. And so this, if you wanted to just have a generic interface, cool, that can be done. Just matter of an hour, right? But if your clients are people like medical people, for example, right, they usually don't really like it so much if they have 10 different options, because people in the medical industry are always short on time. Not saying that we are not short on time, but they seem to be even more short on time, if that's even possible. But in that case, someone who's an orthotics specialist, right? They don't care whether this is done through SLS or through MJF, and they also don't care whether this is the newest fancy PA11 or it's the TPU or whatever. They just want to get their ankle orthotic or their knee orthotic or their insole or whatever. And then what you can do is you can set up exactly that workflow for your client, and they don't need to see anything else it's not relevant to them. But that will then take a bit more time to basically um, set up for all of your clients, if that makes sense.
For sure, certainly does.
And this could, I guess, in Australia, in Canada, that would probably apply a bit more to gas and oil industry. Like that example I just now took from Germany and also from Australia. But I could imagine that in the gas and oil industry in Canada, there's a bunch of parts that are just required out in the field, so to say, where you might have a warehouse with a bit of stock, right? But plenty of people, I'm sure, actually just sourcing these parts on demand, which additive manufacturing is quite useful. But I want to stress here that it's what we kind of work with in terms of education and AI is not only done on additive manufacturing. This is a general scheme for manufacturing that can be used also in terms of the streamlining of all of these orders and processes in production.
Awesome. One last question for me, I guess, as well, is have you guys, in the last 10 years or so that you guys have been up and running, really had any significant challenges or reoccurring challenges when it comes to applying AI into AM? Whether that be Germany specific or international or anything like that. I think our audience would probably be curious about those challenges as well.
Yeah, of course. I guess thanks to ChatGPT and to other AI tools out there, it's broadly very much accepted to just be interacting with an AI. I guess where it becomes a bit like where you just need to be careful is that you actually explicitly say, hey, look, this is an AI, and always give the option to, if you want to speak to a person, this is contact details of our personnel available in these times. So that is always something that we make everyone aware that wants to use such tools. It's while it's a useful tool, it's also subject as a marketing tool as well, right? Because a lot of people just want to work with say fancy tools out there, which such an AI tool is inviting to.
And I want to add to that one more thing. And this is not from my time during Phasio. This is from the startup I used to work with before. Um, I led a very interesting dinner with leaders, CTOs of complex hardware companies last summer. And we're talking people who design space stations, people who are running the operations of Motorola's hardware solutions, um, complex electronics, all of that, complex hardware systems. And what I found interesting there from a leadership perspective and people who own big parts of the business in terms of processes, um, they all agreed on the fact that AI is amazing for optimization and improving what's already there. But the trust element of anything that's more original thought or suggestions, the creative element, um, would likely never be removed, right? So making sure it's clear that we play on the strengths of the technology where possible, but also remembering that, speaking to an actual human who understands the context in a human-centric way. For example, if it's about a relationship or if it's about some interfacing part of communication that simply has gone missing if it's just through technology. Um, Ensuring that the tool has the right context, that's the hard part still. So I feel like that's more a general challenge and not necessarily a phasio challenge. Anyone who's trying to implement these types of solutions, I think, has the responsibility to educate the people who are trying to apply them and use them in day to day, is aware of any of the potential pitfalls, so nothing wrong happens along the way.
Certainly, totally agree with you guys there.
Do you know, Nicole, of within Canada Makes, is there anybody that is using AI in sort of like an educational direction nowadays already, or is it more like the sort of, I just in quotes, classic applications of AI in terms of generative design and these kind of things? I'm sure are being used.
Yeah, definitely. I unfortunately don't have, numbers or insight to exactly what our members are doing. Um, and here at Canada Makes, I think we definitely are more streamlined on that community and marketing building than the AI practices internally. I know there are some really innovative companies here in Canada really pushing the needle with AI implementation into AM. As well, there is, in our kind of ecosystem, there's an AI for manufacturing organization that's definitely more focused on educating AI and manufacturers in Canada. And so sometimes I also run both organizations, so we sometimes marry the two and have conversations about that and can connect the dots between AI and manufacturing and additive manufacturing. But unfortunately, I don't have kind of specifics there within our network. Yeah.
That's all good. It's still interesting to hear.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, it's always interesting kind of hearing the European side of things and especially the German side of things for sure. But yeah, with that as well, we might just keep the question and answer session open maybe for 2 more minutes and then we can kind of wrap this session up today. Um, I don't know if you guys, the Phasio team, has anything more to touch on there. But yeah, let me know.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I want to mention is that if anyone here who's listening or seeing this wants to engage in like conversation about some of these examples that I shared, or I mean, there are hundreds of other examples that are really interesting use cases of advanced manufacturing technologies in combination with software in spaces like in Central Europe and obviously also Asia and Australia. I'm always happy to connect over these and share some of the insights that I got over the past few years working in that space.
For sure. And I just saw Pascal's note, Additive Excel, which um, is an exciting new division of Atlantic Excel out in Newfoundland, Canada. They're working with ML and AI and ISM on their metal 3D printers. So just one example. I'm sure there's many across Canada that are applying it more into the additive space.
Yeah, those are really cool examples as well, indeed.
And maybe also one more thing to mention from our side. We are working on giving Canada Makes members a special discount as well, in case you want to start working with Phasio after assessing whether some of these use cases are relevant to you. So if that's the case, I think it would be best to have a chat and see how we can help.
For sure. Definitely more details will come out with this webinar and more details to come as well as we have those conversations. But maybe just to wrap it up, I will pop some details in the chat here, but I just wanted to say thank you everyone for coming out today. It was really exciting to kind of connect the dots internationally between Canada Makes and Phasio. Um, as well, just hear more insights and use cases where AI and additive can be married, and really the synergies between the two technologies under that advanced manufacturing umbrella. I know that is definitely a big focus here in Canada, and it's an exciting place to be for sure. That again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of us on, LinkedIn or email or anything like that. I'll put our details in the chat below. But yeah, without further ado, I will leave it to Stefan and Ludwig. And if you have any more comments, feel free to pass them along.
Well, thank you for the chance to speak here to your community as well. And yeah, it's been nice to be here, and hopefully see you soon in Hanover at the fair there.
Definitely. Awesome. Looking forward to it, guys. Oh, we have
Thank
one
you so
more
much, everyone.
answered. Never mind. We're good. Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Have a beautiful
Thanks.
day.